My background is with Steadicam. So when I talk about this stuff, my connection is with Steadicam. I did that for about 17 years. And I shoot TV shows and commercials right now, mainly. So this device that we have here, this is Justin, our operator. And we got Chris here, our focus puller. We have John over here from Walter Klassen. So I'll explain the companies involved here. Just to give you an overview, this is the MOVI M15 gimbal system, and we have an Arri Mini here with a Cooke 18mm lens. So about a year and a half ago, Ray and I we're good friends, and Ray's also an experienced Steadicam operator. He's been doing this for a long time, like 20 years. He started getting into the MOVI system about a year and a half ago, and he realized that basically with the system, that once you're carrying this thing around, you can't really hold it for more than a few minutes in your arms, because originally the MOVI was just designed to be something you carry in your hands. And Ray being a Steadicam operator and ergonomics being important with Steadicam, he realized I can't hold this thing for more than a few minutes like this, because imagine holding a bowling ball like that. So Ray and I have always had a long relationship with Walter Klassen. And for those of you who don't know who Walter Klassen is, he's based here in Toronto. He started out as an animatronic and special props maker, but he also got into the Steadicam harness business about, John, like 18 years ago? So Walter's based at they're at Broadview and Eastern here in Toronto. And so Walter had started out with this harness that you see Justin wearing is actually the concept for the Steadicam harness that Walter came up with 18 years ago. And since then, it's gone through some various permutations. One of them was a system called the suspender, which was, if you're familiar with an easy rig system, it was basically like an easy rig. So you have a single pole coming off the harness that holds the camera so that it's not putting all the weight on your shoulder. And that's where Ray got the idea of like, well, I can't carry the MOVI in my arms like this, but maybe I can use the suspender rig. So he and I started experimenting with the suspender rig and realized that the problem with that is that the suspender rig has a single cable coming down to support the camera, and it's like a rigid line, like almost like an aircraft cable type of thing. And the problem with that is that as you walk around with the MOVI, any kind of sharp jarring motion with your footsteps or movement transmits right down into the gimbal system and actually creates like a jarring shake, which is not good, obviously. So Ray started experimenting with other things to cushion that, and in fact, he realized his wife had these exercise bands in her gym, and he started playing with those, which is basically like a surgical tubing, like fitness resistance band kind of thing. So Ray started experimenting with those and realized that it actually got rid of the problem of the jarring when you're carrying around the rig. So he also realized that you needed to have 2 points of support as opposed to one. So you can see on this system there's two. So Walter and Ray started working together to develop the Slingshot, which is basically the system that Justin is wearing here. So maybe Justin, just put it down for a sec, and I can show the actual harness to everybody. Sure,
I was just moving it up, but I can wear it.
Okay, sure. So if you turn around, I can show. So you can see the harness that Justin's got on here is essentially the Steadicam harness that Walter makes. But what's been added here, this system is the Slingshot system that attaches to the harness. So if you already own one of Walter's harnesses as a Steadicam operator, then you can attach this to it and have yourself the suspender rig, or the Slingshot.
For $4,500.
Right, that's what it is?
If they want a price.
Right, so to get an idea, the system is about $4,500 to get you into this setup with the Slingshot. Essentially what you've got is these two vertical arms that are completely adjustable. So this section here can telescope up and down, and you've got adjustments here with these arms to actually change the angle of how high it reaches. And you can also extend these points here so you can get the camera further away from you, higher up, and also up and down. The other thing is you've got these actual knobs here are actually the tensioning system that allow you to tension these bands. And the bands are also interchangeable, so they're color-coded. Different colors are different strengths. So depending on how heavy your camera is, you can change the bands out to balance the weight. So basically so your arms are doing as little work as possible, but the rig is floating in a nice place. So for this particular rig, these green bands work really well. They pop out quite easily. After we've done this, like, if you guys want to look closer, we can show you how it comes apart. But you can basically really quite easily change these bands and turn it into whatever band you want to use. You good there? So the main thing with the MOVI also, the big challenge is if you're holding it in your arms, generally you end up with the camera kind of around this height. And if you want to go down low like this, you're holding it down here. If you want it higher, you're holding it like this, which is physically not really practical for a very long period of time. So the nice thing with this system is you can push it right down to the floor. You can basically scrape down off the floor with it, or you can hold it above head level, and following people or animals or whatever you're chasing with it is a lot easier than actually trying to do it with your own hands. So Ray and Walter went through a few months of testing and prototyping to come up with this system, which has actually become quite popular. I know that last year there was Gus Van Sant's newest film. The operator on that was using the MOVI, and they pretty much used this system for a good portion of the film. And last year I did a TV show called The Expanse for the Sci-Fi Network, which actually isn't out yet. It'll be out in December, but we use this system really heavily. And in the beginning I was skeptical of using the MOVI system like this, and the director was really adamant that he wanted to try this thing. And we did all of our homework and testing to kind of get it to where we wanted it, but we ended up using this more than Steadicam. And coming as a Steadicam guy, I was pretty skeptical of how well it would work. But over the course of a 6-month shoot, we had Steadicam all the time. We only used the Steadicam about 6 times. So the MOVI actually ended up being the thing we used most of the time because of the range of motion we could get. We were doing spaceships, it's in the future, so the range of motion of being able to go from low to high was a really great thing for us. The other addition that they came up with was adding these monopods to it, which you can see Justin using now, which basically allow you to push it even further away than what your arms can reach. So you could, essentially, if you had it set up correctly, you could actually have it, if I was standing here, I could have it below the stage and push it down below the floor and then lift it up above my head. So it's quite an easy way to allow you to get range out of it. Of course, the other major part of this is, well, how do you control it? Because if you're familiar with the way the MOVI works, you basically are steering the camera by turning the gimbal system. It's almost like power steering. You move like this and the camera follows you. You go like that and the camera follows you. And they call that majestic mode, which for certain things works well. If you're doing something like a documentary or a music video where you're just following something very easy tracking kind of shot, that works well. But if you're doing something with actors and it's more choreographed shots where you need to do precise moves and land in specific spots, it's actually very hard to do that on your own, which is where these other systems of controlling the MOVI come in. So Chris here has got this thing called the Mimic, which is basically kind of like a virtual control of the MOVI. So instead of Justin having to worry about controlling it, he can worry about positioning the camera and putting it wherever he wants. And I can pan and tilt without him having to worry about doing that. So he can basically worry about getting the camera wherever it needs to go, and I can tilt and move the camera basically as if I was using a video game controller. So you can see I'm basically moving this left and right, and if you look at the screen, I'm controlling it. Maybe, Justin, why don't you go down on the floor with the audience there? There we go. So Chris is pulling focus right now, so I can give me a nice low angle on these guys here. There we go. And now let's say just do a little arcing tracking shot around them. Yeah, go to your left, go left. So like you can see that I'm basically able to control this without Justin having to worry about the way the camera's being panned and tilted. For some people, this is the way to go. I mean, this all comes down to personal preference as far as how you like to move the camera. But it's very intuitive. I mean, almost pretty much anyone can do this. If you have any, hand-eye coordination with a video game controller or an iPhone, you can do this pretty easily. And of course, all these settings that are in here are adjustable. John's actually got over here the tablet for the MOVI, which has all the settings for pan smoothing and tilting. Justin, try doing like a track across the crowd, like go to your left and just track across. There we go. And of course, the MOVI is, taking care of the horizons for you, so you don't have to worry about your horizons as far as the roll axis of the camera. Come lower now, Justin. That's cool. So this is sort of probably the most common way that people would use it, depending on their operating experience, because it's fairly user-friendly, and you don't need to have a lot of experience with joysticks or wheels like what these things here in front of me to control it. So right now, Chris is pulling focus there, and Justin's on the slingshot. Try tracking down the aisle. So this system, this mimic system that I'm holding here, this came out only in the last year. So when we were doing our TV show, this didn't actually exist yet. Go right around the camera guys at the back there. That's pretty cool. So this is quite, the nice thing about the Mimic is that it's, like I said, it's quite intuitive. You can pretty much pick it up and start operating almost right away, and it leaves all the hard work of the, positioning the camera, because what Justin's doing is actually quite the skill in itself to be able to position the camera in the right spot. This gives him the freedom to do really dramatic moves without having to worry about panning and tilting. Sure. So what I'll do now is we'll switch over to the wheels, which I can show those next. Demimic, thank you. Put this over here. Actually, I'll just lay this down.
You want to put the headset on and then I can...
Sure, yeah, I'll put the headset on. This is actually another tool that we use for this system, is these headsets, because you're quite often far away from each other. There we go. Perfect, nice. So, are we engaged? Here we go. So, this is also another system that's made by Walter Klassen, which is essentially a three-wheeled hand control system based on the traditional wheel system that you'd see on remote camera cranes and that kind of thing. So what you've got here is you got your pan, tilt, and roll axis. And if you want to come up later, I can show you more detail, but there's on top of this box, there's a menu screen that gives us all the controls of the actual wheels, of speed, direction, that kind of thing. But it's essentially the same idea as the Mimic, only this is pan, this is tilt, but now I also have roll. So I can set the roll. So if you want to actually have the shot be sort of slightly Dutched like this, you can have it set Dutched and then continue operating with it Dutched. You can have it be rolling within the shot. For the TV show that I was doing, which was all set in space, we used this to simulate zero gravity a lot, which was great. Because the other thing that's nice about the MOVI is the camera's actually, the lens itself is actually moving nodally. So when you're rolling and panning and tilting, the lens is actually moving around the sensor point. So unlike Steadicam, which, don't get me wrong, I love Steadicam because that's what I did for so long. But the difference being is that Steadicam isn't nodal. So the center of gravity is here and the lens is up here. So when you tilt, it's doing this. Whereas with the MOVI, everything's moving around the lens. So it's a different feel as far as how the movement looks. But the nice thing about the wheels, unlike the Mimic, is that you have much more precise control of the camera. Here we go. Go to your right, keep going around. Guess let's just do a wrap. Maybe start all the way to your left. Yeah. Come around. So I'm talking to Justin right now on the headsets. You can hear me. Yeah, that's good. And I'm going to just undutch myself. There. Hang on, let me just hold there, and I'm just going to level up. Great. Okay. So we'll start here, and let's start moving around to our right. I'm going to pan to my right, go to these next guys down here. Look down at his paper. What's he writing? So this is, I mean, this obviously takes a bit more practice, this system, than using the Mimic, but it's more precise. So if you're doing something that's more choreographed with actors, this is generally the better system because you have more precision. Yeah. So come on down the aisle, and we'll go to your left when you get to the end. Let's try going up. There we go. So, yeah, I mean, I kind of equate this to, it's almost like having a crane on legs because you can pretty much put the camera anywhere you want. So let's come down to sort of chest height. Do you want to track to the end where the guys with the monitors are? Yeah, where the cameras are, yeah, that's it. That's cool. Let's come back. So again, this is another Walter Klassen device. So the Slingshot itself and the wheels are both made by Walter Klassen right here in Toronto. They have a great shop. They're actually having an open house tomorrow as well at their shop if you want to come and visit them. So, I mean, for what we were doing on our show, this was the ideal system. Our A-camera operator is an experienced wheels guy, so he was amazing on these things. He's way better than I am with them. But we had the first generation. So I was just talking to John before the show, and he said that since last year, they've already sold about 33 of these units. When we started doing it over a year ago, they had just made their first set. There's a Steadicam operator in New Jersey named Larry McConkey. He's the guy that did the Goodfellas shot and all the shots you can think of that are amazing. He's kind of the godfather of Steadicam. So he actually commissioned Walter to make the first set of these wheels because he got interested in this technology and thought, I want to be able to control them with wheels to make it precise. So Walter worked with Larry to produce the first set. The set that we were using was the second set they made, and now this is the evolution that's come further than that. There's more controls built into this system than there were when we first started using it. So as far as precision goes, in my opinion, is the best way to control the MOVI, but the Mimic certainly is a great tool as well because it's very intuitive, and if you don't have experience with the wheels, then you can start operating right away. So you've got basically two options to do that. The other thing is this will also work with other systems, like this is the MOVI, there's the Ronin, there's other manufacturers that make these gimbal systems. These wheels will work with either system because the language is the same. What else should I mention? Yeah, and the other thing we can do with the Slingshot system, which is great, is you can also use it just for traditional handheld. So kind of like an easy rig, you can pick up the camera and basically use it to support the camera in a handheld way without a lot of the shake. And so yeah, so what Justin's got here is the shape panels, which are, I believe, made in Montreal. But with the Alexa, they just attach right to the rosettes here on the side. It's a very nicely balanced system. So what you end up with is you can basically get the camera balanced perfectly. So when you let go of it, it just hangs nice and level. It's ready to go. So we've got a 100mm lens on here. Should I give you this?
Oh, yeah, that would work.
Here. Oh, okay. Chris has got it. But this was Ray's idea to start using the Slingshot for this kind of thing, because originally the Slingshot was designed for MOVI use, but it's also great for handheld. And I have to say that the harnesses that Walter makes are very comfortable. I mean, when I was doing Steadicam, I'd wear those harnesses for 12 hours a day. And it's all memory foam. It's beautifully made. The guys who make these things at the shop are craftsmen.
Yeah, the difference between the vest and an easy rig is definitely they're personalized. You go in, he measures you up, the vest fits you perfectly, it's meant for you, it's not a small, medium, or large fit,
Yeah.
It's a you fit.
Yeah, so it's kind of like getting a suit made for yourself. So it's, you go in and they'll tailor it to you. And if you're not actually here, they can work with you remotely and they'll get your measurements and they have a chart you can fill out and they can make it for you remotely. But ideally you go in and get fitted and you get to meet the guys that make it. Everything that you see in this harness is handmade here in Toronto.
So I got to switch.
Yeah.
I cross them when I wear the vest, but when I do this,
Oh yeah, so you can do that.
And normally I'd have a monitor right here for myself. We're running late yesterday. But
You got that if you want to see it.
a little awkward, but I zone in usually. And
Yeah.
You start, and so on a long lens. Oh, there we go.
Here we go. So the nice thing about this system, which I think is great, is the fact you can kind of get a handheld feel that's slightly more fluid. So you get a nice, because this is a 100 mil lens. If you were holding this in your arms, it would be quite shaky. And of course, because of the fact that the weight is supported, Justin could wear this for quite a long time and not get tired. How many pounds would you say your arms are holding right now?
35. What, 30 pounds?
But I mean, as far as how much it actually feels in your
how
arms.
much I'm physically, nothing.
Yeah, so it's almost like, yeah.
Nothing. It's all done through my back into my legs.
I equate it to sort of wearing a backpack.
Yeah.
It's basically all the same. If you're wearing a heavy backpack, it's basically the same kind of system of it's on your hips. So you'll find your ass muscles will get a little bit sore, but it's not much unlike wearing a backpack.
Exactly. And so, your reality TV show stuff, your long lens and camera stuff, as an operator, you're asked to sit there for 20 minutes, 40 minutes, an hour. You can do it in the vest. I've done it.
Yeah. The other nice thing about these harnesses is they're also, you can actually sit in them. So if you have to do a shot where you have to start seated or end seated and you have to hold that for a long time, you just done a big long tracking shot and now you have to sit down with an actor, you can kind of sit and you can be comfortable without it cutting into your legs or.
Yeah, the Easy Rig has a post that extends out your back and doesn't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So this Jeremy points out, you consider an apple box and you consider a conventional chair.
Yeah.
And again, it's like holding a camera for half an hour, just went from that to this. I have a tube on and I'm sweating and dry, but as far as durability, it's 10 years on the end of your career, easily, wearing the vest, and as well as just getting your day every day. No shaky cam by the 8th hour, by the 10th hour, no shoulder, oh God, no burning face.
Yeah.
We can keep going through the things that are great about it, and I love it. We just finished a feature with it. We went between Ray and I, between the MOVI and this, and we just blasted through stuff. Jump around, find your spots.
Yeah. I mean, and for me, the TV show, I spent 6 months doing this television show for the Sci-Fi Network. And I started off as a skeptic with the MOVI system in general because I had the Steadicam background, and both of our A and B camera operators are very good Steadicam operators. But the director really felt that this was a new visual language and signature look for the show. And certainly it's a different tool. It doesn't replace Steadicam, but it certainly has a different feel than Steadicam does. And once we got all the kinks worked out in our prep and we got it working, the system worked great the whole time we were doing it, and it really brought a different look to the show. And we couldn't have done it without the Slingshot system combined with the MOVI and these wheels, because we were pretty much using it in that way all the time. The wheels, the Slingshot, the MOVI, and it allowed us to do shots where we could have the camera go from the, at your feet, up in the air. It could fit into small spaces. It was to me kind of like having a crane on legs or a techno crane on legs. And I left it completely converted. I went into it very skeptical, and I left that show being almost in a way kind of a bit scared because I thought, you know what, it's going to be hard to recreate this because the next thing I go on, we're going to have to get all this stuff again, which is, at the time, was still very new. We wrapped the show in March, and this was a very new concept. This system, the Slingshot, had only been around for less than a year at that point. So if someone wanted us to do it again, we'd have to get all that gear and people and stuff reassembled. So I realized this is like a totally cutting edge thing that's going to start become quite popular. I could see it coming, that this is going to be another way of moving the camera around, as influential as Steadicam was when it became a thing. And all the directors that we work with on this show, and these are guys that do like Vikings and Game of Thrones and Breaking Bad, they fell in love with the system. They left the show saying, I don't know what I'm going to do on my next show, because we could do so many cool things with this that we couldn't have done in any other way, that they were like, we got to buy one of these. We got to get one for ourselves. Because how are we going to do this on the next show? So we go back to our show in the new year, and we'll be doing the same thing again and taking it to the next level. So from my experience, it was basically a game changer. Steadicam is still a great thing, for sure, and it'll always be a tool that we use, but this is another tool. You know, there's certain ways where Steadicam does things better in terms of fitting into some kinds of smaller spaces. Even with this, like, our worry was the height, the clearance of door frames and stuff would be an issue. For us, it ended up not being a problem. We were worried at the beginning that our sets, we were in spaceship sets and small confined spaces. I mean, think submarines in some cases. We were worried about this, but it ended up not really being a problem for us. We were able to always adjust the height of these arms to get through where we had to go, and it ended up not being an issue for us at all. Yeah, and of course, like I said, these bands, what does it come with, 4 different kinds? It comes with 4, the system comes with 4 bands, different colors. Different colors are different strengths. So if you have a really light camera, you can put the lightest bands in there, and they come out very easily. You can change them within a matter of minutes. So you can pretty much customize yeah. You gonna show it?
So that's pretty easy too for whoever is going to take your camera from you. Bands, we don't have here in the back, so I'm not going to go grab other ones.
But this is basically what he's undoing here is also the tensioner. So once you attach the bands, you crank those knobs to actually tension them, because you actually want these bands to be under a certain amount of tension so that they actually are smoother. If they're not under enough tension, they actually are kind of stiff and bouncy. So you actually want it to get quite, you want it to look like that when you're putting weight on it.
So it's pretty quick on the go. That comes up, the bag goes in, I put it back up, throw this in. You do it once, you let your key see how it's done, and then you never have to do it again, hopefully.
But I mean, it's great that, Justin can basically do this himself in a way. If he really had to, he can be doing it himself. So you're tensioning it back up. The other thing to mention is that Klassen also makes, what's special about this MOVI is that the crossbar at the top here, just step aside for 1 sec. The crossbar at the top here is actually made by Klassen, because if you notice these hooks on the end, these hooks actually connect to these little kind of grooved discs on the end of this rod. This rod basically, you take out the one that comes with the MOVI and you add this to it. And it's got these custom-made little receivers on the ends that Walter makes that allow you to clip in really easily with these little hooks. So it's like a quick release system, because otherwise you're struggling with it with the traditional MOVI crossbar. And also these monopods, they're essentially monopods that have been attached to these clamps. That's also something that comes with the Slingshot.
So you're supposed to do the MOVI on a stand, balance it, but I found that I've been able to
Balance it on the rig?
here.
Right. The other thing about these harnesses is they all have an air bladder in the back. So in behind Justin's back here in this memory foam padding is an air bladder. So you get like a little air bicycle pump, and you can actually pump it up to basically, it's like a lumbar support, and you just do it to what you feel is right. It kind of presses into your back and gives you some nice comfort. There you go. Another interesting trick that our operator, Jason, on our TV show came up with was, one of the great things with the MOVI, of course, is that you can actually do handoffs. So you could have the camera, say, way up on a rope, coming down from the ceiling, flying through your set, coming down to the ground, and then an operator grabs it and keeps going and goes off down another long hallway with it. So of course, if you're using the Slingshot, well, how do you get in and out? How do you do that, right? So Jay came up with this idea where he got these, he actually went to a sex shop to get these things, but it's essentially they're like cuffs, like wrist cuffs, that have hooks on them. So he wore the cuffs, and it basically attached his wrists to these bands. So he's now attached to the Slingshot. So when the camera came down from the ceiling, he could basically grab it from the rope. The key grip could unhook the release, and he could just keep going, because now his arms are being supported by the Slingshot. So it actually, handing it off, like either giving the camera up or taking it, made it really easy. So we did a lot of cool shots where we would come down like, ladders through the ship, all the way down the ladder, following an actor. The actor gets off the ladder, the key grip undoes the hook, Jay takes the camera and then keeps going and then goes right down to the floor and tracks all the way down the floor to the end of the hallway. So we did, that was pretty cool. Yeah. And all it was just a simple pair of like sex shop cuffs, basically. Like. Do you guys have questions? We can talk about anything you want to talk about. The latency? I'll get back to that.
Latency, well, it answers the question. It's one-to-one. The Mimic responds one-to-one. It does. The wheels are just the same as well. You can finesse the wheels to respond slower or faster, just like the contemporary wheels would work. The Mimic itself, though, is really interesting because the Mimic is on, we have it on this right now, and I played around with putting it on my bar.
Oh, so the Mimic removes the...
So I can go, and whatever I'm looking at, it responds
right,
one-to-one.
right.
Than the Majestic.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that.
I just did it on the last thing.
That's cool.
Yeah. But that's another option too. So there's 3 ways of operating this unit in conjunction with the vest. And you absolutely, whether or not you're going to get the Walter Klassen vest, which I highly recommend getting, owning, renting, you make money from it. It's a great thing to have in your possession. You cannot operate a Ronin without this vest. You cannot operate a MOVI without a vest.
To me, it's kind of, when they first started releasing these gimbal systems, I was amazed that was their concept, was okay, just take this thing and carry it around in your arms. Because you can't really, there's no way to hold this for more than a few minutes before you get tired. But that was the way the system was designed, to be held in your arms. So there are other people now who've done systems like this. People have used easy rigs where they've added these kinds of bands to solve the jarring problem. But essentially, you need some sort of support. If you're going to have a MOVI system, you need some kind of system to carry it, because your arms won't be able to do it for too long.
5 minutes.
Yeah.
Maybe. You work out maybe 10 minutes.
Well, the director on our show, he was kind of worried about the bulk of the Slingshot system, and he's like, well, I don't understand, why can't he just carry it in his arms? So he came to the test, and we built it up, and we had it built, a carbon fiber Dragon, the lightest weight, we had, the lightest lenses we could get, still the whole rig, this thing weighed 24 pounds. So I said, here, you pick it up, and I'll walk around and see how long you can hold it for. And he realized within a few minutes, he's like, yeah, okay, I get it. And then we accepted the fact that we're going to use the Slingshot system, and it wasn't really his worry was that it would get in the way of the sets, but it wasn't a problem for us. We worked around it, and because it's so adjustable with the arms, the height, and the angle of them, if we had a problem with some kind of physical limitation, we could adjust it pretty easily. So, did that answer your question about the latency?
Quickly show this is what we meant about the different orientations.
Yeah.
This is the quick down, up, and then your max weight.
And of course, if you already own one of these harnesses as a Steadicam operator, this system mates to that harness. So if you already own one of these harnesses, you can just buy the arm system to attach to it. So, right.
You already have the vest?
Yes.
Good. 4,500 more get you.
Right. So yeah, 4,500 is the arm system if you don't already own the vest. I don't know what the vest is.
The vest is another, you're looking at 9 and a bit.
Right.
For the whole thing.
Yeah. So it's about 9,000 for everything. If you had to buy the harness, that gets you everything. But I've been a customer and sort of collaborated with Walter Klassen and his team for 18 years or so now, and they have full CNC fabrication. They do carbon fiber, leather, everything you see here is made there. They have an amazing shop. They can make anything you can imagine pretty much, and they do amazing props and animatronic things for feature films as well. So as far as a company to kind of get to know and see what they do do amazing things.
The open house tomorrow.
Yeah, they're having an open house tomorrow. So from like 2 to 8, they're at right at the bottom of Broadview at Eastern. So if you want to go visit, see the shop, they're going to have all this stuff there.
Get an idea of the height.
Yeah.
I'm not going to throw it back on again,
But if you have it in this height and you have those monopods extended, you can easily have the camera, 8 or 9 feet in the air, and and you can push it right down to your feet still, which is pretty amazing. So.
And they're good people. The customer support is amazing with Klassen.
Yeah, I mean, basically, Klassen, anyone who's anybody in the Steadicam world around the world has one of Walter's harnesses, and they pretty much come from all over the world. Like, you think of any major feature film you can think of, those guys own one of Walter's harnesses. So they come to his shop, they get it made, and it's actually a cool place. If you're hang out there long enough, you'll meet people from all over the world that are coming to meet Walter and to try their harnesses out. So they're pretty cool that way.
I'd highly recommend anybody tomorrow to stop by the shop, check it out. It's
It's kind of like a mad scientist workshop. He's got like props everywhere, like animatronic reindeer and.
Super inspiring.
Yeah.
Like if you're in a bit of a lull and you need to be inspired.
It's like an artist's.
Yeah, half an hour through that place.
Hive.
You're back up again.
Yeah.
It's just all sorts of stuff. But yeah.
Anybody have questions? Anything you want to see or try or?
Looks like he's got a question. No?
Oh yeah. Oh sure. Yeah. That's a good point. Sydney reminded me. This is the CSC's magazine, and we have a booth here, which is somewhere over there, right? There's actually an article in here about the slingshot that Ray did that explains how it came about, and there's some photographs. This is actually a shot from Gus Van Sant's film where they were using it pretty heavily. So it's a good article that explains in more detail than I've given you. So there we are. That's us. And you guys good? Thanks a lot, guys. Thank you, Justin and Chris and John's back there from Klassen. If you got questions for Klassen, they've got brochures and stuff here too if you want to see anything or
any material.
got questions. If you want to try the wheels before we put them away, you can come try them. Or there you go.
All right.
Thanks, guys.